Hello and welcome to episode 145 of the Mark and Me podcast. As always, I'm your host Mark. Joining me on today's episode, for me, is one of the most iconic characters that you'll ever find in the history of comedy on TV. It really is true. I'm joined by the amazing John Challis, Boycie himself from Only Fools and Horses. It's a great interview and I can't wait for you to hear it. But in true typical Mark and Me fashion, I always like to touch base and use a couple of minutes to talk about the previous episode. On episode 144, I was joined by Dominic Monaghan. We got to talk all about Lost. What an incredible TV series that was. Not only that, we talked about Lord of the Rings, which for me is one of the best trilogies of all time, and much more. And as always, the response was fantastic, so a huge thank you for everyone that took the time to listen and for all the amazing feedback that I received online. But today's completely different. Today is Boycie himself, John Challis. So I think the best thing to do is to get to mine and John's interview right away. So here's me and John talking all things TV. Thanks for taking the time to join me today on the Mark and Me podcast.
Sure, no problem.
What I wanted to do today is, there'll be a lot of fans tuning in, but what I wanted to do is take it back to the start. So briefly, what was it that made you, when you were growing up, want to become an actor?
I think I sort of felt more comfortable being other people than myself. I had a sort of facility for mimicry, I suppose. You know, I could impersonate people, including quite a lot of the masters at school and some of the boys, you know, which was a great sort of defensive mechanism against the bullies and so on, because they never quite knew who they were talking to. And I was in all school plays too, so it just seemed the most natural thing in the world to do, really, to be other people. I don't know why. And I did a bit of rock and roll. I picked up the guitar, you know, in the late 50s, like a lot of kids. And I had a little band. And so I guess looking back, I was always going to be a performer, you know, or want to be a performer. But of course, when I left school, everybody sort of put me off it, including my parents, saying it was very insecure. Unsurprisingly, it is very insecure. There's no question about it. They wanted me to have a safe, steady job somewhere, like most parents. And I started working in an estate agent's firm in Surrey, where my parents live and so on. But I got so bored and couldn't pay attention and so on. And I was sacked after 6 months. And I just sort of went off and potted off and did sort of odd jobs, delivering groceries and driving people around and so on. Because I had passed my driving test. It's about the only exam I ever passed in my life, really. And eventually sort of found a newspaper in W.H. Smith's, and it was advertising for a travelling children's theatre. And I just, on a whim, I just went and got interviewed by somebody, and they said, well, you can start next week if you want to. And I went off to Liverpool, where this theatre was based, and I started life on the road, you know, in a van, playing lots of different characters in plays like Pinocchio and so on, and in schools every day, different school, different town, you know. And, I loved it. I loved being on the road, and just sort of mucking about, really, and doing what I did at school. Excuse me, and then I just went on to repertory and so on, you know, to the usual path, I suppose. Finished up at the West End of the Royal Shakespeare Company, and then started doing the telly. So, but it's ideal for someone who doesn't want to really work too hard for a living, and like sort of mucking about and you know, pretending to be other people. That was the attraction for me, really.
So how did you win your parents over? At what point were they then taking you seriously? Because everyone must think, you know, parents' worst nightmare is when their son turns around and says, I want to be an actor or a rock star. You know, they're probably thinking, Christ, we need you to be able to pay a mortgage, you know.
Certainly, that's right, yes. Well, I think I just left home, really, at the age of about 18, and went on the road, as I say. So they sort of had to accept it, I suppose, because I didn't go back. I didn't sort of want to go back, really. But of course, I did to sort of visit, but I never wanted to live there. I just liked being I liked being nowhere in a lot of ways, like I didn't live anywhere for years because I was in repertory theatres after that, and of course a different town. There was a spring rep, a summer rep, and a winter rep, and I finished out in the seasides and Wales and Scotland and all sorts of places. Learning the craft, I suppose, but so there was a lot of work about the theatre those days. And I think they just sort of said, "Oh well, nothing we can do about it," and eventually they realised that I think part of the problem was, quite rightly, that I never took anything very seriously, and they were just worried that I decided to do something and it wasn't going to last very long, and I'd be adrift, as it were. But I found it suited me very well. So and eventually I finished up in West End theatres and the Royal Shakespeare Company and so on, and then appeared on television. So my mother particularly was delighted. My father never thought it was a proper job, I don't think. Never did. But I think secretly he was quite proud of where I'd got to and so on.
So with the success of obviously Only Fools and Horses and being one of the most loved TV shows of our generation, did your dad ever eat his humble pie and say, "Well, son, you proved me wrong," or was he just always going to keep saying, "Yep, it's still not a proper job," even when you're on telly every week?
No, I think he did eventually, very late on. My mother dragged him to see me in a play called Dirty Linen in the West End, written by Tom Stoppard, and it was one of the happiest things I ever did, I have to say. And it suited him because he was a civil servant and very close to sort of special committees in the House of Commons and so on, and all the shenanigans that went on, and that's what this play was about. A very satirical play, and he saw me playing, the leading role in this a northern, it was a northern man, it was a blustery type northern, and he apparently slid further and further down in his seat. He'd hardly ever been to the theatre, but eventually he finished up sitting upright, and eventually he said, "I was so proud of you." And I said, "Oh, thanks, Dad. Thanks very much." And he immediately sort of walked out of the house and didn't come back for about an afternoon.
That's amazing.
He was one of those people who's a generational thing. I think he was a Yorkshireman, and I don't think he had a great deal of love at his home. And I think it sort of rebounded, but it was a long, long time ago now, talking about the 50s, 60s, early 60s, and, when you were a kid at home in those days, you did something wrong, you got thrashed for it.
Yeah.
But you accepted it, and the same happened at school, preparatory schools and so on. Same thing happened, but you just accepted it as part of life, and thought, "Oh, don't want to do that again, then. That hurts." You just got on with it. So I had a completely different temperament to him. He was a very hard worker, and an organizer, and I was completely the reverse of that. He just saw me as a dilettante, as someone who just liked mucking about, which is true. I did.
Yeah.
I didn't. It was temperamentally very, 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 very different. But anyway, I think he was quite proud, eventually, as far as I can work out, anyway.
And I'm sure you get this question a lot, but how did the part of Boycie become your life? Was it a case of going to an audition? Did you have a manager that could find you the role, or were you spotted, or how did it come about?
Well, it really happened because I was spotted by the original producer of Only Fools and Horses, who's a man called Ray Butt, who was a big friend of John Sullivan. That's how John Sullivan got his stuff on. And I was in America, actually, at the time, and I suddenly got a call from my agent saying that he'd been on the phone and he had a part in a series called Citizen Smith, which starred Robert Lindsay. It was about Wolfie and independence for tooting, and he was the sort of Che Guevara of South London, I suppose. John Sullivan's first series, and he said, would I come and play this sort of bent copper? So I did. I played a lot of coppers. Some of them bent, some of them weren't in those days. And he liked it. John Sullivan came up to me afterwards and said, you see, I really like what you've done with that. Because I'd borrowed the characteristics of somebody I used to know in a pub locally, and particularly the voice, and this very pedantic way of talking, you see. So I just sort of inflicted that on this poor character, and nobody said anything, so I just got on with it. But John Sullivan, he said, I really like that. He said, I'm going to try and use that again one day. And I went, oh, well, thank you very much, and never thought any more of it. But about a year later, strangely, I was at the National Theatre by this time, sort of trying to become a proper actor. And I got this script through the door for a new comedy series called Only Fools and Horses. So it's a lucky thing that I did that episode of Citizen Smith, because it led to, this little cameo role as it was then in Only Fools and Horses, and then it grew from there, really, all through the 80s. Very lucky, right place, right time, I suppose,
And I know it must be hard because you are Boycie and you are part of the production, but did you ever, even on set, think it was ever going to become this global phenomenon which it is? Because surely, as successful as it is, no one could have ever anticipated just how big it got.
No, absolutely not. We started in 1981, and it wasn't really until the mid-80s that you suddenly realised that it started meaning so much to people because of the reaction, not just critically, but also people in the street are coming up to you saying how much they're enjoying the show and they like the character and so on. And I remember us all talking about it, saying because we'd all been in series up to a point up to then, but never had this reaction, so it was considered very special, really. But absolutely no idea what was going to happen. And we all thought it had come to an end, sort of 96 and so on. So, well, that's it, but we've had a good run. And then blow me down, it came back again in 2001, and there were 3 more specials, and the whole thing turned around, and they lost all their money and so on. And so we all got back together again. And that was the end of it. But I mean, if you think that's 20 years, 1981 to 2001, we didn't do shows in some years because John didn't write them, really. We did a lot of specials which had come out at Christmas and so on. But it's still going. I mean, I can't believe it. I mean, here we are, 40 years later, over 40 years later, and it's still on every day. And I'm still getting letters from people and presents. People send presents, and I mean, it's just extraordinary, really. But the main thing really is that it means so much to people. It's helped all through this terrible year where everybody's had. A lot of messages from people saying it's really helped me through this difficult time, and thank God for it and all that. And you think, my God, at least you've done something valuable, but not just entertain people, but to really help along, which is a terrific thing for me, anyway.
And at the moment, obviously, you've just finished production on Boycie in Belgrade. Now, I've seen the trailer, and it's insane. I think the fact that you go there and you're like a god, you're like a king when you arrive, and the people there, it's their most watched TV show. I don't even know how you get your head around that, being there and feeling like royalty in their country. It just must be absolutely surreal the whole time.
Well, yes, it was surreal. It happened quite out of left field. I was signing copies of my autobiography somewhere, Peterborough or somewhere, and a television crew turned up from Serbia. And somebody said, "Crew from Serbia." I went, "Yeah, right." I thought it was a wind-up. But they interviewed me, and they filmed me sort of signing the books and so on, and they told me how popular the show was out in that part of the world. I went, "What?" Well, I knew all over the world. We get some people, we send photographs to people, so it's quite popular. But they're fanatical about it, and they said, "You must come and appear on our television show." And I went, "What?" Well, anyway, I did because I'm a great one for trying new things, And I found out that it was just people just loved it, and also the fact that during the terrible wars they had with each other, what used to be Yugoslavia, Croatia and Bosnia and all that, it's just very complicated for us to understand. But it was a terrible time. It's a civil war, really. And the host of the television show said, he said something about only fools and horses. He said it was the only thing that made us smile during these wars.
Wow.
And I went, what? It was such a poignant thing to say. And I just thought of all these poor people in their bombed out buildings, not their fault, it was a bloody war, watching us lot knocking about, with their subtitles, laughing and clapping each other on the back, and then going out and sort of fighting a war. And I thought, that's ridiculous, And I thought, wouldn't it be wonderful if you could sort of bottle that reaction, that laughter, and take a swig of it if you felt upset about something, and the world would be a much better place. I know it's pie in the sky and it's hopelessly romantic, but I just thought, God, wouldn't it be wonderful? So I came back with that sort of feeling. I don't know how you feel. You're just amazed. And I was out doing my one-man show, and a guy turned up to see it who was from that part of the world, actually Montenegro, not Serbia. But he was a big fan of the show, and we met up, and he suggested that I go out there. And I said, well, I've been out there. He said, no, we must go and we must explore, and we must perhaps try and find out why he's so popular out there, and we will do a documentary. What? I've never done a documentary in my life. And he said, no, but it's great. You will, people will love you, and we can talk, and we can go to so many places. And he was a real entrepreneur, and we finished up going out there and learning an awful lot about the history of that part of the world. It's fascinating. It's called the Crossroads of Europe, and all the wars that have happened over the centuries. They've gone backwards and forwards over this part of the world. It's no wonder. It's also split. But they love Only Fools and Horses, and as we see in the documentary, people are just over the moon about it. And I went to a royal palace and the British Embassy, and Red Star Belgrade Football Club, which I'd always had a thrill about. For some reason, since I was a kid. And there it was, and the whole of Belgrade, the whole history of it throughout the centuries, and the tabernacle they'd been trying to build 3 times. They'd had to go building this, and each time they nearly finished, another lot came in and invaded them. Whether it was the Ottomans, the Russians, the Nazis, whoever it was. Said, right, stop building that, and they've been trying to finish it since the early 30s.
Crazy.
And this is their third go at it, and it was full of scaffolding and mosaic, and they were determined. And this determination of those people to finish this church was just, and they have now finished it. And it was a great. I think it comes out in the documentary when I remember the pastor sort of showing me around the place. And he said 3 times we have tried to rebuild this, but this time next year. And I said, we'll be millionaires. He said, no, we will have finished. And, so there's that connection with this show all through the society there, top to bottom, just like there is in England. And I just find it all fascinating. And there were plans for us to perhaps go out there again. But of course, it's all been kiboshed by the pandemic.
Yeah.
But we could hopefully we can get out there again and do some more. I think because it's they say you must come back. You must. In fact, I got all sorts of offers to go back. And I think, I think it would be really nice. I think it really would because it's fascinating. So there we are. There it is. I mean, as I say, this documentary, Boycie in Belgrade. I thought, wow, the world is my oyster. I thought to myself, Boycie in, I don't know, Kathmandu, Boycie, anywhere you go, But I didn't know how it's going to turn out. But people who've seen it have said, it is amusing, but also very interesting too, which is great. That it appeals on more than one level. It's not just a jolly joke. But I mean, you'll see murals of Del Boy and Rodney, and sort of some of the shattered buildings, and but also, there's serious stuff about it, and about what happened to this tabernacle, Saint Sava, and I'd love to go out there and see that finished. And anyway, hopefully this for next year it'll have to be now, I think.
Yeah.
So should I survive, I'll. Anyway, I hope people enjoy it.
I can't wait to see it, and it sounds interesting. I can't wait to see the history side of it, but also the humour, and I just can't wait to see it from start to finish.
Smashing good, thank you.
One thing I do on this podcast, John, is I make it quite unique by asking the guest that's on the spot to choose the outro music. So every episode that's been on, I've had actors on here like Anthony Hopkins, Mads Mikkelsen, all various different guests, and each person gets to choose a piece of music, which is the outro. So I'm going to put you on the spot. Can you think of a song? It can be by a group, a band, or just a piece of music that, when I ask the question, comes straight to your heart, that means a lot to you, that you would like to be the outro music for your episode?
Oh, that's very nice. I was at that White Snake number, Here I Go Again, David Coverdale's
perfect,
brilliant sort of anthem. Or The Show Must Go On would be good, wouldn't it? Now. Oh, no. Well, I think Here I Go Again is the one.
Yeah.
Really, because it's The Show Must Go On is a bit of a long story to get to a big finish, and Here I Go Again is pretty immediate. So I think that's the one, probably.
Perfect. I want to thank you for your time today, for coming on the podcast. I'm a huge, huge fan of your work, and I did meet you a few years ago at a Comic-Con for MCM in Birmingham many years ago. But I look forward to, obviously, the world going back to normal and hopefully being able to have a beer with you one day, and, this series doing really well, and you doing a Boycie in Belgrade again, or Boycie in New York, or Boycie in Australia. I hope it all opens up for you.
Boycie on the moon.
Yeah, that would be good.
That'd be good. You're no relation to Adam Wood yet, are you?
I'm not. No, I get that all the time. I tell some people when I get bored that he's my cousin, but no.
I just thought I must ask, because I worked with Adam at the National Theatre 100 years ago. So,
yeah, but thank you again. Thanks for your time. I do really appreciate it.
Not at all, Mark. My pleasure.
Have a great rest of the day as well.
Thank you, and you.
Take care.
Bye.
So there it is. There's my interview with me and the absolute legend, John Challis himself. An amazing guy, so many stories, and there's so many more to be told. I absolutely love the interview and really, really, really respect the guy. So it's an amazing time to have him on, and thanks so much for making it happen. I hope you've all enjoyed the interview at home today, and as you heard on today's interview, we're all talking about Boycie in Belgrade. Go and check it out now. I've now been lucky enough to see it. It's fantastic, an amazing series. You will not regret it. Go and check it out and then let me know on social media what you thought. It's so, so good. Thanks again for everyone that's tuned in today and listened to today's episode. It's been a great blast. And if you love today's podcast, please share it on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. I ask it on every episode, but you have no idea just how much and how important it is for you to share these episodes. It means that a whole new audience gets to hear these podcasts, these interviews, and jump on board. And that's what I need more than ever. Also, I do have a Patreon page. You can jump onto markandme.com On there's links to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and as I just said, the Patreon page is there. You can go in, and if you're new to Patreon and don't know what it's about, it's a way of saying thank you and supporting the podcast. You can give me as little as £1 a month to say thank you for a minimum of 8 episodes currently. But not only that, I want to recognise and thank you for all the support. So I'm giving away some amazing prizes each month, from Last Exit to Nowhere t-shirts, from the amazing Vice Press posters, and even more. I've got so much coming up, and honestly, it means a massive deal for me, and means all the money that goes into the podcast that I get from you guys means more and more episodes. So it really is a win-win, and I can't do it without the support on Patreon. So if you're listening now and you feel I'm worth just the price of a Mars bar or a can of Coke, throw it my way, and honestly, it goes a long way. I'll be back in only a few days' time. As you know, with Mark and me, it's absolutely crazy right now. It's so busy, but there's loads of good stuff coming your way. So I'll be back with a brand new episode in a few days' time. But until that moment, stay safe, look after yourself, be nice to each other. It's a tough world out there at the moment. Be loving, and I'll see you all soon.
I don't know where I'm going, but I sure know where I've been. Hanging on the promises and the songs of yesterday, and I've made up my mind. I ain't wasting no more time. Here I go again. Here I go again. Though I keep searching for an answer, I never seem to find what I'm looking for. Lord, I pray you give me strength to carry on, 'cause I know it means to walk